Hello everyone, myself Ritesh. I have 5 years of experience into data engineering and data analytics field.
Yep. Good morning, folks. So in case of Azure, our primary focus would be on ADF. So once the ADF is done, there are few dependent services on ADF like storage account, the data lakes and blobs. So that we are going to cover with the ADF. Key vaults, that also we are going to cover with the ADF. And the creation of databases, the SQL Server databases, along with ADF only. So if you compare, if you analyze it, ADF, storage services, the SQL Server databases, key vaults, and few security mechanisms that we would be covering. At the end, once this is done, we would be starting with the Databricks, the usefulness of Databricks from the analytics point of perspective. What is the usefulness of Synapse? Now, Synapse is a combination of Databricks and ADF clubbed together. So that we would be covering, and few insights related to logic apps. What exactly is the logic app? What all connectors we have, and how is it useful from the data analyst point of perspective? Where can we create logic app flows? How does it work like? So that all concepts we would be covering. So most probably our primary focus would be ADF, because as a Power BI developer, many might expect you should know the end-to-end flow of ADF, more a kind of pipeline, more a kind of data movement or data cleaning process, the ETL process. Any question on this? Maybe we'll discuss it at the end of the session if you have any more questions. For time being, I'll start with the today's session. Now today we are kind of going to cover the few insights related to the SQL only, how the queries are written. What do you exactly mean by DDL, DML, DQL, DCL, and TCL? Now, if time permits, we'll cover all four or all five together. Let me open the SQL workbench. So once I open it, yesterday we have already seen how do we install this. Now, the folks who haven't installed it, request is to install it as early as possible. Let me open this. Now, yesterday we have seen few queries. How do we create a database? Once we create it, how do we select that specific database? And once you want to use that specific database, now the creation of database means creating a structure, creating a schema, or creating a skeleton. We have seen the usefulness of schema, what exactly schema means. So once we create a database, the background skeleton is also created. Now, whatever information you want to um, update, or whatever information you want to create in this specific database, that specific information would be residing in only that specific database which we are using it. We need to use this specific database, and only in this specific database only, whatever tables we create, whatever views, functions, or procedures we are trying to create, all that information would be stored in this specific database, or this skeleton which has been created as a schema. um, at the end, I've also covered, this is case insensitive language. If you're speaking it with, if you're comparing it with any other SQL service also, MySQL has that one big advantage, which is case insensitive. If you write combination of caps, combination of small letters, if the naming is matching, irrespective of whatever letters you have, the naming is matching, it will take that. So I've written use Sakila, which is default database or default schema available. I've written S, I've written K in capital. This is case insensitive. Even though I've written with different keywords, the naming convention is same. SAKILA. The naming convention is same. So it will take that, the MySQL workbench, it will take this into account, that there is a database and I want to use this database. Now, today I've opened this window again. So default, it, the whatever database we have created, it would not be selected. So the first thing, whenever you open this MySQL workbench, always select which specific database you want to use. Now I'll select this. The database is selected. Once this is selected, I'll use this database. I'm using this database. So under this database, we are going to try few commands here. Now, the important aspect here is if you're working on any SQL concepts, the keyword should be always in capital. Even though it is a case insensitive language, it can take a combination of both caps and small letters. The ideal industry scenario is whatever SQL keywords we are using, that should be always in caps. Now we'll be starting with today itself. Now keywords means create database. Whichever is in blue color, this is the SQL keyword. Now this is the name of the database. We can change the name of the database as per a request, and this is not highlighted as in blue format. Whereas use is a keyword. So whichever keywords we are trying to use, that should be purely in caps. Now, by chance, if I try to miss anything, you can highlight it that this is a keyword and I'm using it in small or a combination of small and caps. It should be always in caps. Use whatever the name. Now here you can write case insensitive. I can take any specific letters. If I use this also, so it will work. Even though the letters are combination of caps and small, it will work. By why? Because MySQL is case insensitive language. Now again, this is same using the database. The use I've kept it in caps. Why? Because it's a SQL keyword. Now, the first thing, once the database is created, we can start with creating a table. Now, what do you mean by table and how do we create it? Table is where the information is stored, the information or whatever data we are trying to enter, that is stored in a structured format in a particular database. That table needs to be present in a particular database. So for that reason, we have selected the database and we are using that specific database. Now for creating a table, we should always start with create table. Now this is keyword, that's why it's in capital letters. Create table, the table name. Now um, rather than taking any random table, let us create some interactive table. Let's create a table, India info. Now I can keep everything in caps, India underscore info. The table name is also in caps. Once this is done, you need to mention what all columns needs to be present in this specific table. Now for mentioning that column, I'll open a bracket, I'll close a bracket, and I'll use a semicolon. Now what does this semicolon mean? Yesterday I've explained you, wherever you're trying to end a specific SQL query, at the end, you can use a semicolon. Now this, I'm ending a semicolon. Now this is the query and I'm ending with a semicolon. Now there is some error here, error in the sense, if you see hover on this also, it will try to give some information. Most of the times it will give, yeah, something is, this is not valid at this position, expecting EOF as. Now, why it is not valid? Because we haven't mentioned any specific column. I'll mention as, create table as, I have to mention columns. Now, what all columns are present? Now, for our information, I've created the India info table where it will contain information related to few states of India, its capital cities, and when was it, when was the state formed, in which specific year, or maybe age of that state. Rather than using any random employee table or a kind of a random table where it will contain employee name, age, I'm trying to take it more interactive. Now let's take what all columns would be present in this India info. Create table. Now it will have state name. Now see, while writing, um, I'll explain you why this is, why there is an error here. Why is it highlighted? Capital, age of the state. I'll keep it as age and region. Which region is it? Now, these are the columns which are present in this table. For every column, there needs to be a data type. Now, what do you mean by data type? Data type is, it describes more about that column. If you want to compare it with any English grammatical explanation, wherever there is a verb, there would be an adjective. Now it would be more complex if I go in depth, but for every specific column there has to be a data type. Why? Because that data type explains what type of information you need to enter or what type of information we can enter in that specific column. Now for state name is a character. Now I can write varchar. Now, what do you mean by varchar? I'll try to explain it in a different session. Varchar is nothing but a type of data type. Now, once I mention a varchar, there is a functionality that I can also enter what should be the maximum size. Now I'll keep it as 100 bytes. Now the information in any SQL is generally stored in bytes. BYTE, not BITS, bytes, BYTE. Now, even if I've mentioned this, I'll go back down, capital. It should be also in varchar only. Why? Because the capital is certainly written in a character format. Now I'll mention 100 again. Now here, see, there is a very slight difference. Capital, it is not giving any error. It has taken varchar data type, whereas state name, it is giving us an error. Now, why is it so? Because state name is not clubbed together. Name, it is taking as a, this is a keyword. This is taking as a different name. It is highlighted in blue. Capital state highlighted in black. Now, let me take this. If I take an underscore, so complete name is giving an error. Ideally, earlier, name, it was taking as a keyword. But if I combine this with underscore, everything is highlighted as error. Now, why is it so? After every specific column, there has to be a comma present. Now, if I take a comma, that error is gone. Now, if I remove that comma, that error is coming here for capital. Now, why is it so? Because there has to be a difference. The SQL engine is not that smart enough to assume that after state name, it is moving to a different column. If you want to differentiate multiple columns in that specific table, there should be a comma present. Now, once I take a comma, age, it is reflecting as an error. Why? Because after capital, I haven't taken. There isn't any difference. If I take a comma here, it will go down to the region. Now, what should be the age? Now, there is a data type called as int. I'll take it as int. I'll give certain data type or the size for it. Now, this should be capital. Why? Because this is a keyword. I'll keep it as capital. Now, once this is done, at the end, it is giving me an error. Why? Because for this region, I haven't mentioned what is data type. Now, if I mention a data type, see, all the errors are gone. Now, the question is, can I take a comma here? Now, if I take a comma, it is coming as an error here. Now, why? Because after region, there isn't any specific column present. We have only declared 4 different columns. That's it. So wherever the column name is ending and there isn't any other column present after that, it is not recommended to use a comma. If I use a comma, it will give me an error. Why? Because it is expecting some other column here, or it is assuming that there would be some other column. So for that reason, it is giving me an error. Now at the end, no comma is required. Now I'll create this table, create table. This is the table name. These are the columns. Now see, I've explained you, if I don't take a space here, it will give me an error. Why? Because it is assuming this name as a keyword. This name can be a keyword in MySQL. Now, in order to make this active, I'll use a joint statement, or maybe if I use a dash also, say it is not working. So recommended is always go with underscore, state underscore name. It will be combined together as one single column name. Now let me create this. See, it has created, but there is one warning. Integer display width is deprecated and will be removed. Now this warning. There are few warnings related to any updates or maybe anything related to data types. Now that is not more important for us. If there are any specific warnings for the query optimization process in future, we are going to see. But for now, this table is created. Create table India info, and these all columns are created. Now, what does this query specify? This query is specifying, I'll use a comment. This query is specifying, or probably I'll use it upwards. This query is specifying how do we create a table? Create a table. That means creating a structure of a table or defining a structure of a table. I'll keep it as defining a structure of a table. We are trying to define a structure of a table. Now, once this is done, we need to verify if this table is created. Yeah, we can get it from the output window, but we need to verify. How do we verify it? We need to select some information. By using a select query, we can see if this table is created or not. Select star from the table name. Now, table name is this. I'll copy it here and I'll paste it here. Now I want to end this query here. I'm ending this query. Now, what does this query specify? I'm trying to select. Now, what do you mean by star? Now this is very important for any SQL point of perspective. Wherever you use star, star means selecting all the columns. If you want to select all the columns from this table, you need to use star. If you only want to specify few columns, now you can specify that few columns also. State name. Now let me help you with the difference. I'll use this. See, select state name from a specific table. So it is only displaying state name. Why? Because we have only selected state name. Now if I use select star from a specific table name and I'm closing this query. Now the star means whichever columns are present in this table, all that columns would be visible. Hey, I've selected this. See, all four columns which we have created, it is present here. Now the concept of columns and rows comes into picture. While creating a table, you should always mention what should be the structure of the table or how many columns are there, name of the column, data type, and the number of columns. I mean, if you have four columns, you need to mention four different column names. So it is not recommended to mention row. No, row comes into picture whenever you're trying to insert a record in that table. You're only defining the structure of the table. So for defining the structure of the table, columns are important. Columns are important. Now I've given you an idea. If I select any specific column name, it will only display that column name. But if I want to display all the columns, select star. In all SQL tools, irrespective of MySQL, it might be SQL Server, PostgreSQL, it might be IBM DB2, or maybe any other SQL. Oracle also, there the usefulness of star, the use case of star is common. If you use star, it will select all the columns. Now this is for selecting the or viewing the query, or I'll keep it as viewing the structure, viewing the structure of a table or any created entity. Select is used for viewing the structure of a table or any created entity in SQL. Now once this is done, the table is created. Now I want to insert few records to it. Now records in the sense I want to insert few rows to it, few information to it. Now how do we insert that? We have seen how do we select, we have seen how do we create, we'll see how do we insert records. Now I'll use a keyword called as insert. Insert into, now I'll keep it as table values. Now wherever this table name is also I've written as caps, but if you see this is column name. These are all column names. I'm keeping it as a combination of caps and small. Now I want to insert few records. Let me take a gap here. Insert into this table. We have the table structure. Insert into table values. Now what all values I want to insert? I want to start with state name. Now I'll start with any random state name, comma. What is the capital? I'll mention the capital. Now it is not recommended. You should always use caps here. You can use small letters also, comma, age of the state. Now, bit informative. When was the state formed? Maharashtra was formed around 1960. Now, what is the age of that state from 1960? If I take this, see, it was formed on 1st of May
63.
1960. Yeah, 63. So we can mention age of that state, 63, comma, which region is it? In India, which region is it? It's a part of West region. Now I'll enclose this. I'll use a semicolon. Let me take few more records. Okay. Now, Telangana was formed in 2014. I'll keep it as 10 and it's a part of South region. I'll take few more records. Now, if you're using, you can use a copy paste also, but recommended is always use your query in detail. If you're writing it with your manually, it would be more easier because it will go into mind. It will keep you can have a track in your mind. So let me create Nadu, Chennai. Any folks from Tamil Nadu? When was it created? It's a part of South region. What's the formation day? When was it created? 1956. So how many years? 63 and 67. 67. Okay, my bad. I've taken a different comma. No, I'll explain it at the end. Let me take one more value. India underscore info values. I'll take Karnataka. I guess it was in 1956 itself. I'll keep it as South. See. Now these are the values I want to insert in that specific India info table. Now if I try to insert this specific value, it will give me an error. Unknown column Maharashtra in field list. Now why is it so? If I scroll it upward, let me see what is the structure. State name, it is in varchar. Now, varchar is a kind of data type. If you want to mention any specific, or if you want to insert any specific information to this column where varchar is mentioned, we have to certainly differentiate it. We have to always write that in commas. Now you can use either single inverted comma or either you can use double inverted comma. Combination of both is not recommended. If you want to use single inverted comma, always use single inverted comma wherever varchar is present. Now state name is varchar, capital is varchar. Now these are few rules. If you use a varchar, if you're using it as a string, now varchar is nothing but a string, a kind of string data type. Wherever there is a varchar or a string data type, you should always mention that in single inverted commas or double inverted commas. Now I'm using a single inverted comma. Let me insert this. See, this value is inserted, one row affected. Let me say, take this, select, the information is present here.
Sorry to interrupt, Ritesh. Why we have not used it in numbers?
Good question. Now, as I've said, there are few rules and regulations. If you're using SQL for certain time, or if you're using SQL, um, the rules and regulations are, for any string, you should always use inverted commas. Now, if I use an inverted comma here, let me see if that information is inserted, or I'll take it in the other one. Let me use inverted comma here. I'll take an inverted comma here also. Let me insert this. See, it is also working. But recommended is, if you even not use inverted comma for an integer, it will work properly. Why? Because the rules are defined in such a way, wherever there is a varchar, wherever there is a string value, there only inverted commas are important. Now you can use it for any specific data type. Compulsion is use it for string. If at all it is not string and you're still using inverted commas, it will work fine. I've taken example of the second insert statement I've used for integer. Now integer is age of the state. I've kept it as an integer. Now you'll have a question that where to use single, where to use double. You can always use double also. But if you're using a double, see, if I use a double and if I use a single, it will give me an error. It is clearly giving me an error. Why? Because it is unable to understand. Now, if I use a double, it will work properly. Let me use double for this record to be inserted. So I'll not use for age. Why? Because it is not compulsion for any integer data type. Now I'm using it double and I'm inserting this specific statement. This is inserted. Let me use select query. Now if I use select, see, all the information is updated or inserted in that specific table. Now recommended is, if you're using a double inverted, always end with a double inverted. Combination of both is not used. It will throw me an error. Now, if you're using a single inverted commas and you want to insert all these records in one single go, use single inverted commas in all the insert statements. Now, for our explanation, I've given you an idea. Always use single or always use double. Both, combination of both is not recommended. But if you want to insert all these insert statements in one single go, always use any either of them. If you're using single, always go with single. Never use double in any of the insert statement. In one single go, you want to insert this. So for that specific reason, I'm trying to, I'll keep it as single only. Even though this insert, the record is inserted, I'll again change it to single inverted commas. Why? Because it looks more easier to understand. If you're using a combination of both, even though it is working properly, a combination of both means for the other statement it is single and for the below statement it is double. It may not be that intuitive for our understanding or easier for our understanding. Now let me insert this record as well. Yeah, this record is also inserted, and let me use a select query. See, all four records are inserted. Now what do you mean by insert? Insert means we are trying to manipulate an information. Now manipulate means we are trying to enter some information. Now entering some information, insert records or rows to a table, which is nothing but a manipulation. Now, manipulation means we're trying to push some records to that specific created table structure. We are manipulating some information there. The first one is defining the structure. Second one is manipulating. Now, when we move at the end, I'll explain what do you mean by definition, what do you mean by manipulation, and what all DML, DDL means. Now, we have inserted few records. There are few other statements which are related to manipulation. Now, manipulation means once the records are inserted, I want to update some information. I'm not satisfied with a specific information. I want to update some information. Now, how do we update that information? Now, what I'll do is I'll update the capital to only 3 letters. I don't want all the full capital name. I only want 3 important letters. Now, I want to update that specific information. Now, how do I update that? Let me write an update query, update table. This is the table name. Now, once this is done, what I want to update. Now, update means I'll use a set capital equal to. Now, capital is a varchar for that reason, or I'll keep it as all caps. Now, see this query itself. I've written a query. Ideally, this is correct. Ideally, this should be correct. Why? Because insert into table, update table. It is giving me an error. Let me use a semicolon. I'm closing this statement here. Let me, now if I hover on this, table is not a valid position or not a valid identifier. Now, why is it so? The certain SQL rules are whenever you are using an insert, whenever you are using a create, there you need to mention what you are creating. I'm creating a table. For that reason, I've mentioned you need to define the structure, and for that structure, what structure you are creating, we are creating a table. Okay. Insert into, we haven't mentioned any table here. Directly we mentioned table value, that is name of the table. If you are using any manipulation language, that is insert, even update is a manipulation language, never mention the or the we have already created a table. It is not recommended to mention we are trying to update a table. Simply mention the table name. It automatically takes. But if you are defining a structure, you should always mention that table keyword. Why? Because we are creating a table there. The table is already created. I want to update specific information from that table. So update table, set capital equal to MUM. Now, if I run this, so it will run perfectly. But if you see 4 rows affected, I have updated capital to MUM, but all 4 rows got updated. Now, if I use a select statement here, see, the query is working perfectly fine, but it has updated capital for all the states together. Now, why is it so? Because we haven't specifically mentioned for which specific state or which specific region I want to update that capital. I have to specifically mention that. Now, if you're using an update query, it is always recommended never use directly update. You should always use where condition. Without where, update is very, very dangerous. If you're using update directly without where clause, it would be very, very dangerous, because see, our table is very small, only 4 records are there. Now, if you're working on a data set which has million or billions of records, and you're using an update without any where condition, all the information is gone. Now, if I use a where condition, now what I'll do is, prior going to this, I'll delete the records first. Now, the records are not perfectly available. Now, there is a statement delete from, what I want to delete. I want to delete all the records from this table. Now, delete is a manipulation statement or a manipulation language statement. Insert, update, and delete. These 3 are data manipulation statements. So you need not mention the keyword table. You can directly mention the table name. So what does this delete will do? If I use delete directly, say I'm using delete from table, and I'll run this. This is working fine. All 4 rows are deleted. The reason, I only wanted to delete the first Maharashtra, and I want to insert that again, but I've used delete and all 4 rows are deleted. Now, why is it so? If we could have mentioned where clause here also, it would have only deleted that specific Maharashtra. Where state is equal to Maharashtra, I could have mentioned where. Now, for both update and delete, without where clause, if you're using, these 2 statements are very, very dangerous. Now, you have to be more precise. You have to be more accurate. If you are a database developer, or if you're working on any specific statements related to update and delete, never go go without where clause. If you simply use these statements, it will update or it will delete all the records, irrespective of whatever change you're making. So always use where clause if you're using update or if you're using delete. Now this table is already created. Let me insert this records. I've deleted the records. Table structure I haven't deleted. Only rows I have deleted. If you are using a manipulation language, the table structure would not be disturbed. Why? Because table structured is created in a data definition language. Definition means creating a table structure. I'm not touching the table structure. I'm only deleting the records or information present in that table. Now, if I come down, table structure is intact. I'll insert these records, all 4 records. See, all 4 records are inserted. Let me use select statement. Why only one record inserted? One row affected. This is inserted. All 4 records are inserted. Now I'll explain only one record it was inserted. I'll explain it.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
And I just see that insert statement for Telangana, the int has a quote, the number 10.
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
If you're using a string, it is compulsion to use inverted commas. Now, for
Okay.
any specific data type, you can use inverted commas. Even if it is int, even if it is date time, then there is a key, the data type called as date type. There are many other data types. We'll be going through that. But irrespective of any data type, you can use inverted commas. Compulsion is, it is always recommended to use double or single inverted commas for string or varchar data type.
Okay.
If you don't use, it will give me an error or it will throw an error.
Thank you.
This is working. I'll explain why it didn't work. All the insert statements altogether, it didn't work. Why? Because in simple terms, see, I'm ending this statement here. If you're ending a statement, and again you're trying to write a new statement, it will only take this first statement. For that specific reason, all the inserts were not particularly, or all the records were not inserted properly in this table. Now I've inserted it singly, the information is present. Now I want to update this capital for Maharashtra. Now what I'll do, I'll use an update statement, set capital. You need to use a keyword called as set. If you're using an update, set capital is equal to mum, where state underscore name, state name equal to Maharashtra. Now if you are mentioning that string also in this update statement, it should be in single or double inverted commas. See, what I'll do is, rather than taking everything in small, I'll take in caps. Let me see if it works. It works. Why? MySQL is case insensitive language. It will not differentiate if everything is in caps. It will not differentiate if it is in all small or if it is in combination of caps and small. All the information is same. Let me use select statement again. See, only for Maharashtra, the capital has been updated to MUM, the first 3 letters. Now, if let me come down, I'll use a delete statement. See, what I want to do is, I only want to delete this Maharashtra again. I only want to delete this specific record. Why? Because only capital isn't mentioned in 3 letters. I'll use a where clause. If I've used delete directly, all the records were deleted. Now, if I use a where clause, where, now what I'll do, rather than using state, I'll use region. Now, if I use region here, I'll mention region is equal to west. Now you can use exact west, which is written here, or everything in small. This would also work. Record affected successfully in the output window, and I'll use a select statement. See, only 3 records are there. That Maharashtra record is been deleted. I've written everything in small, region. Now let me use another delete. Now what I'll do, I'll use a copy of this. I'll paste it here. Now I'll use south here. Now prior going to this, I'll insert the Maharashtra record again. Record is inserted. I'll use select. See, it is working. 4 records are there. Now I'm using delete again, where region equal to south. See, if I've used this, 3 rows are affected. Why 3 rows? Because 3 states which I've entered apart from Maharashtra are all part of South India, are all part of South region in India. For that reason, all the three states have been deleted. Now, if you're using update, if you're using delete without where, even if you use a where clause, you need to be specifically more kind of analytic. Now, analytics means you have to first see the data. Okay, apart from region, where state is equal to, I specifically wanted to delete a certain state. Maybe I wanted to delete Telangana. I've written region south. For Maharashtra, I wanted to delete that Maharashtra. I've deleted it from where region is equal to west. Why? Because only one state was from west. But I specifically wanted to delete Telangana. I've mentioned region is equal to south. But all three states, apart from Telangana, there was Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, which was also from south region. For that reason, all three got deleted. Now you can use where as well as and clause together. Where region equal to south and state underscore name equal to, I only specifically wanted to delete Telangana. Now you can use this statement. Let me insert this records. I'm again inserting it. I'm using a select statement. Records are present. I specifically wanted to delete Telangana. Spelling is correct. Yeah, spelling is correct. See, only one row affected. Even though I've taken region is equal to south, I specifically wanted to delete state name is equal to Telangana. I could have directly written state name is equal to Telangana, but I specifically wanted to delete including region and keyword. Now, and is also a clause here. Where is also clause, and is also clause. Now, what do you mean by clauses? I'll explain it in some other lecture, but for today, we are primarily focusing on manipulation of data. We're primarily focusing on defining the definition or defining the structure of the data. Insert, update, delete belongs to data manipulation statements or data manipulation language. Now, important thing is if you're using update without, I'll keep it as update the records in a table, and without where, update is dangerous. Now, similar goes with delete. If you're using a delete without delete the records in a table, without where, delete is dangerous. You should always mention where. If there isn't any where clause, it would be very, very difficult. Why? Because all the records are updated, your complete data would be changed. If you're working on million, if you're working on even on thousand of records, not even thousand, even hundred of records, if all the records are updated, you have to manually go and see what was the previous information and how do we rename it or how do we change it back to the previous. Now, there are few statements which are related to commit, which are related to rollback. That also plays an important role, but that for that perspective will take some other day. For today, we have used insert, we have used update, we have used delete, which are more specifically data manipulation language. Manipulate the data present in any specific table. Now, we have seen insert. Insert is nothing but, sorry, we have seen create. Create is nothing but the defining the structure of the table. Now, apart from create, I specifically want to add an additional column to this table. Maybe I want to add some additional column. Excuse me. Now, I specifically wanted to add an additional column to this table. Now, adding an additional column means changing the structure of that table. Now, what all column can be added? If anyone can give me any suggestions, what column can be added for this? State name is there, capital is there, age is, when was it created, the region is there. Any specific column we can add?
Language.
Population,
Good.
language.
Good. Language, a primary language. We can add a primary language column. Now, I want to alter this table. I want to change the structure of the table. Now, alter means there is a command called as alter where we are using it for changing the structure of the table. Now, for that specific, let me write it, alter or change the structure of a table. Now, how do we change? I want to additionally add a column. Alter, it's a keyword. If I simply write table name, see, it will not take. It is giving me an error at the very first go. What we are trying to alter? We are trying to alter a table. We need to specifically mention why, because this is alter is a data definition language. We are trying to define the structure, which we're trying to change the structure of the table. Alter table name. Now I want to add some information. Add I want to add a column. Add, what should be the column name? Language, is it language, or I'll keep it as primary language. Language is a keyword, it seems. Primary language. Now what is the data type? Should be varchar again. Varchar. I'll keep it as 50. Let me use this. Now I've added a column called as p language, which is primary language. Data type is varchar. Let me use a select statement again. See, language is added. Now I've deleted Telangana. For that reason, Telangana is not present. Let me insert that. If I go back, scroll it down, I wanted to insert Telangana. So it will give me an error. Now, why it will give me an error? Column count doesn't match. We have additionally added a column called as P language, which is primary language. Prior to that, there were only 4 columns, but we have added an additional 5th column, and we are only trying to insert only 4 records. Now it will give me an error. Why? Because column count doesn't match. Column count is not matching here. We have to exactly match the column count. If you are using an insert statement, if you are inserting any specific records, the count of records should be, or the count of columns, that specific length of that insert statement should be matching with the number of columns present in that table. Earlier there were 4, we have inserted 5th column. Now 5th column, if you are inserting any record, it should be matching with that. Now if at all you want to take it as null, if at all you wanted to take it as null, you should always mention, I'll use a comma here. Why was it? I use a comma and I'll use null. I want to insert null only, comma, primary language. I'll keep it as null. Let me see if this works. This is working. Why? At the end, I am not trying to insert any primary language for Telangana. I've kept it as null, but I have to ideally declare that there is a column after region, which is primary language. Even though I'm not inserting it, I've kept it as null. Null means no information is entered here. I've used single inverted commas. Why? Because it's a variable, that is varchar or a string value or a string data type. For that reason, I've kept it as null. I'm not trying to insert anything. Let me use select statement. See, this is working fine. Now, important is it is giving me a null. Here it is giving me nothing. It's a blank. Here it is taking it as null, but here it is taking as blank. Now there is slight difference between blank and nulls also. Null means every null is a unique value. Every null is a unique value. Now this is asked in interviews. Every null is a unique value. If you're working on any specific nulls or blanks, nulls, or I'll keep it as nulls versus blanks, every null is a unique value. Now if you have a comparison, every blank is not unique. All blanks are same. I'll keep it as blanks are all similar. This is an interview question. Now this might be asked in any twisted way. If you have a, let me take an example. If you have null here, this is one specific column, and again in another row, same column, this is null. The column name is certain, there is certain name, maybe employee name. This is the employee name, which is column name. This is column name, employee name. And in this employee name, in the first record, I'm mentioning, or I'm trying to enter null. This null is unique. There is no similarity between this null and the below null. This null is also unique. Every null acts like a unique. Whereas blank, if at all there isn't any mentioning here, this, if there is a blank here, blank means nothing is mentioned, only blank. How I inserted this blank, the Telangana, where the primary language, I've kept it as blank. This is blank. So this blank, and if there is another blank here, both the blanks are similar. You cannot, these both blanks are similar. They will not act as different. Both the blanks are similar. Now this is asked in interviews. Null, every null acts like a unique value. Every blanks are similar. If you compare any blank, all blanks are similar. Now coming back to our query part, if you're using insert, it should match the number of columns. Now you want to specifically neglect that last column. I don't want to insert that. I don't want to insert this P language column. I want to keep it as default. The default it is null. I want to keep it as default. Now what I'll do, prior going to that, I'll delete that Telangana record again. I'm trying to delete. Let me use select statement again. See that Telangana is deleted. I specifically wanted to, let me copy this statement, paste it at the end. Now I specifically wanted to neglect the primary language column. Now, how do we do that? We can do that. Insert into table values. Now I'll mention columns here. What all columns I want? Only that columns I will. Now I specifically wanted to mention state name, state underscore name, comma, capital, comma, age of that state, comma, region. I don't want to mention the primary language. I don't want to mention the primary language. Insert into values. Now that values, I have to copy that. I'll only copy till here. I'll close it. Now this will work fine. Why? Because we haven't mentioned the primary language column here. Insert into table. I only want to insert these 4 columns. Even though table has 5 columns, but I have specifically highlighted these 4 columns, and depending on these 4 columns only, the other values which we have mentioned, that columns would be inserted. Now you can change the column conditions or change the column values in the sense place of the columns. Now I'll give it as an homework, or I'll give it as a practice. If you mention state name, if you mention age, and you are mentioning capital again, and try inserting that record, whether it will work fine or whether it will give me an error, let us know. Take this as an practice for today. Interchange the column positions. If you interchange the column positions, the value should be also interchanged. Why? Because we are trying to mentioning in that specific way. If you take state name, if you take age, and again take capital and region, see how it works. Interchange the values also as per the interchanged column names. Now I've used insert with only specific columns I wanted to specifically insert in that table. I've mentioned only 4 columns, and all that 4 columns are inserted. Now if I use a select statement here, see, primary language, it is coming as null because we haven't inserted anything. Default, it is taking as null. Null and blanks, every null is a unique. Null means no value, not even blank. Blank means there is certain value we are trying to insert, which is kind of zero or which is kind of blank. Now coming back, I've used alter. Now there is a statement for alter is for changing the structure of the table. Now I specifically wanted to drop a column. I specifically wanted to drop a column or delete a column from that table. Again, alter table, table name. What do you want to drop? What you want to drop? Drop a specific column. Now you need not mention column as a keyword. It will take. If you specifically want to mention, you can add column also, but it is not recommended. Column name directly works. Drop specific column. Now I want to drop age. Drop age. Alter table, table name, drop age. Let me see if this works. This is working fine. The age column is delete or removed from the structure. See, state name, capital, region, primary language. Age column is altered. Altered means change of structure of the table. Now there is a statement drop table. Now what do you mean by drop and what do you mean by delete? Delete will only delete the records, not the table structure. If you are using drop table, it will delete the complete structure. The skeleton of that table is deleted. Drop table, table name. Now what do you mean by drop? It will drop all the records. It will drop the table structure as well. If I use this drop, it is giving me 0 rows affected. So it will not take into account how many rows are present. It will simply go and delete the India info. If I use select statement, there won't be any specific table. Table India info doesn't exist under this database. Why? Because I have completely dropped the structure of that table. Now, if you're using drop, the data definition commands are restricted to few set of people only. You cannot create a table. You cannot alter a table. That is, if you're working in any real-time scenario, most of the times we have data manipulation access, not data definition access. Now, why is it so? Because we may not be the admin, or we may not be the right person to add any specific column or delete any specific column or even drop any specific table. That can be done from the maybe a client end, or that can be done from a admin perspective. But for our understanding, if you're using alter, if you're using drop, here also you need to be more precise which specific column you want to drop or which specific table you want to drop. Once you drop that, complete structure would be deleted. Now, what do you mean by truncate? Now, there is a statement called as truncate. Truncate is also part of data definition language. Truncate table, whichever table you want to truncate. Now, truncate means, see, once you use a drop, for certain period of time, the table structure would be present. Maybe it is not visible for us in this schema. That specific table structure would be present for certain period of time. If you use a truncate, including table structure, everything would be deleted. Not even the cache would be present. Truncate and drop would look similar, 99% similar, but there is only 1% change. For drop, the table structure might be present for certain seconds or maybe certain minutes. But for truncate, even the structure, the table structure would not be present. It would be automatically deleted at that very specific second or at that very specific time when we use this truncate. Now let me create the table again. What I'll do, I'll mention primary language here itself, P language. It is varchar. I'll keep it as 50. Scroll it down. Marathi, close it. Let me insert these records. Okay, this table is not created, it seems. I'll create this. Okay, table is created. Let me see the structure first. Looks good. Insert. See, all 4 records are inserted. Now, if I use a truncate also, it will work similar like drop, but there is a very slight difference. Now, that slight difference I've explained you. If you're using a drop, the table structure would be present for certain minutes or maybe certain seconds. But if you're using a truncate, it will simply delete all the schema details also. Now, schema means the table schema, not the database schema. For table also, we are trying to give us a kind of skeleton, what all columns should be present, what should be the column names. So that information we are giving it while creation of a table, while definition of a table. That specific definition would be completely deleted at that specific time if you're using a truncate. Let me use a truncate table, 0 rows reflected. If I go back again, it is similar. But see, there is slight difference. That slight difference, column names are present, records are not visible. Sorry, the records are deleted. I've used a truncate, column names are present, but the records are deleted. Now take this as a kind of maybe any scenario, work on this, maybe as a practice, why truncate is taking all the columns. I can change the columns here also. We have a flexibility. Whichever column I want to mention, you can replace it, change the column names. But if I'm using a truncate, column names are present. Now take this as a practice or maybe work on this. Why? What is difference? What drop means? If I'm using a drop, completely everything is deleted. But for truncate, the column names are present. Now, this is asked in interviews. It will be a kind of confusion. For that explanation only, I've used drop, I've used truncate both. This is working certainly different. Why is it so? Work on this. I'll explain it in detail. How do we differentiate that? Now, today we have seen specific commands related to DDL, which is nothing but data definition language, data definition language, DML, which is data manipulation language. Now, if I go back to the presentation, our primary focus was how to create a table, how to alter a table, how to drop a table. These 3 commands belongs to definition of that specific table. We're trying to change the structure of the table, data definition language. Now, if I go back to DML, insert, update, delete, this all belongs to data manipulation language, which only focuses on the information present in the table, not the table structure, not the table structure. And we have seen data query language today, which is nothing but fetching the information from that specific table or a database. Select is data query language, DQL, data query language. These 3 commands we have seen today. or these three different commands present in these three different scenarios: manipulation of data, definition of data, and data query language. Now we are left with data control language, transaction control language. These two concepts we would be covering, maybe going further. But prior to this, we need to first ensure that we are particularly clear from these three point or these three important point of perspective: the manipulation of data, definition of data, and querying of data. Any questions on the concepts which I've covered today? Any questions?